Sonic the Hedgehog has been a staple series in my life for as long as I can remember. Collecting the games, toys, or more recently the comics, there has always been something worth diving into in the franchise. Sonic Adventure 2 being my favorite game of the series has been a title I jump back to religiously to re-experience. When Sonic's 20th anniversary was fast approaching, everything regarding it enthralled me. I was determined to find out anything and everything going on. And in 2011, Sonic Generations had its announcement trailer released, with Sonic and his modern design running through a location that looked a lot like Green Hill Zone, only to be joined by his classic self. Despite Sonic's reputation going in every direction over the previous years, Sega managed to constrain Sonic's history into a simple, understandable, and polished culmination in Sonic Generations. That launched for the Xbox 360, PS3, and 3DS, which, shameless plug, but does have its own dedicated video here on my channel. But that release was over a decade ago, and a lot has changed since then. The series has begun getting remakes and re-releases, starting with Sonic Colors Ultimate and Sonic Origins, though in 2024, perhaps the most well-received title was given a new breath of air. Sonic Generations was coming back. Along with it were enhanced visuals, music arrangements, and control options. But that wasn't all. Sega brought back Sonic's longtime rival, the world's ultimate lifeform, Shadow the Hedgehog. This time bundled with Generations' base game, Shadow got his own adventure, Shadow Generations, that tells a much deeper story and pulls together the last decade of Sonic's best gameplay and mechanics into one stupefying experience, leaving the title Sonic X Shadow Generations to be one of the best in the series, and possibly the best 3D Sonic port for the Nintendo Switch. While I've never outright reviewed Sonic Generations, it is a title that's been out for nearly a decade and a half, so I'll try to keep my review here rather simplistic. Base Generation sees both modern and classic Sonic teaming up after a new enemy known as the Time Eater rips the world of color and time itself, kinda on the nose with the name, leaving the two to blast through a culmination of Sonic's most iconic levels in 2D and 3D, restoring color and their friends back to normal. The story is generally lacking in depth. It's a pretty basic plot that works for the narrative, but it almost never feels that there's any real suspense or threat. While we see characters frozen in time and see stages lacking color, there doesn't feel to be any pressure to complete the game. Not that there really needs to be, but overall, something that feels like it was necessary to stop the Time Eater would have really helped. Both of the Sonics blast through white space. It's the name of the hub world. Here you can complete challenge stages, main stages, boss battles, and rival battles. As well, there's a collection room for art, music, cutscenes, and a trophy room down below. The main stages focus on two ways to play, Act 1 being fully 2D gameplay akin to the Genesis games, or so Sega says, and then Act 2 focusing mainly on 3D gameplay, taking direct inspiration from the day stages in Sonic Unleashed and Colors. Both acts are masterfully designed, catering to the original design philosophy of high roads being faster but harder to maintain, and low roads being slower while easier. Act 1 Sonic is stated to be Sonic from his early years. He has no special moves, just a spin dash and jump. And while he's said to be the Genesis style gameplay, this man is not classic Sonic. Did you see that spin dash? Sonic never moved like that. He's basically a bullet. But all jokes aside, his tight platforming matched with the strongest level design in years makes Act 1 of stages a treat to play. Act 2 stages, on the other hand, use the boost formula to blitz through the world, completing quick stomps, steps, and slides to reach the goal. Each stage here is 3D with some sections in 2D, and personally, outside of Planet Wisp's second half, the game never really feels like 2D sections really detract from the quote-unquote 3D that Boost Sonic should be having. These levels tend to have some huge highlights with spectacles, such as Green Hill Zone with a ginormous chopper bursting out of the water to eat Sonic, or re-experiencing Sonic's near-death getaway from the gun military truck that's ready to flatten him or cut him in two in this one. There are a total of 9 main stages to fly through, 3 from each respective era of Sonic, Classic, Dreamcast, and Modern. Classic has the original greats, Green Hill, Chemical Plant, and Sky Sanctuary. Dreamcast has Speed Highway, City Escape, and Seaside Hill. And Modern has Crisis City, Rooftop Run, and Planet Wisp. All work fantastic in 2D or 3D, and all of them retain that expressive color and atmosphere, and flow, as they originally did, making them such iconic mainstays. Outside of the main stages, there are plenty of challenge stages as well. Personally, the first time I played through the game, I loved every challenge stage, mainly because I got to play the stages that I adored in new ways. Taking off those glasses to see these stages as they were, they're alright, just quick time wasters. The quality of the challenges range from simplistic to something pretty fun. I love the use of Sonic's friends in the stages, such as Cream's mission, which is a challenge that sees you get support from Cream and Chao, as you only get one ring to begin the stage, and throughout the stage you can only get up to 5 additional rings. In one stage, I have strangely fond memories from was Vector's challenge Pick Up the Beat, where you must hit Vector's music notes back to him in time, which starts off really slow and boring, but does get really fast and hard near the end, which then leaves us with only 2 other types of stages, rival and boss stages. The rival battles recreate absolutely iconic moments from Sonic's history. These rival battles are always running battles, whether facing off and beating Metal Sonic, the iconic Shadow and Sonic jump into the sky, and then showdown, or the new reimagined Silver boss fight, that I feel is a little bit on the easy side, but definitely shows Silver's powers off better than. They are all great ways to nod at some significant moments from Sonic's history. The bosses here are staples as well. The Death Egg, with a fantastic remix, Perfect Chaos, evoking the true design Sega was going for all those years ago, and the Egg Dragoon, which sees Eggman at his absolute wit's end trying to finish off Sonic. The bosses are some of the biggest and baddest bosses of Sonic's long history, and a wondrous treat to play through. So what's new this time? With Sonic Generations getting a remaster, Sega had to add some new features. Did we get new stages, new unlockables, or characters? No, yes, and kind of. Let's dive in. The new additions to gameplay were the Chaos that now inhabit each stage. There are a total of 3 to find across every stage, pretty similar to Red Star Rings. However, I gotta say I love them. When you find them, each Chao is different. Some look like Sonic or Amy or Shadow, and then when you exit the level, they stay relaxing on the Hub World's level select. I think they're really cool regardless of how much Sega keeps the true Chao Garden from us. The next most apparent change is the dialogue. Almost every cutscene has been redubbed with new voice acting and different dialogue itself. Honestly, I didn't care to see that it was changed. Some of it to me does make sense though. I always wondered why even modern Sonic wouldn't say anything when rescuing his friends. I mean, he's known for his snarky comments. Having him silent was such a strange direction. Luckily, Sega has rectified that here. The change with dialogue does bother me, but only when the lip sync and animations don't line up. It kind of feels pointless for the game to be updated with new dialogue if it's not executed across the whole scene. It feels sloppy and somewhat middles the new experience that otherwise feels polished.
Thanks, Sonic. I thought I was dead, floating without a body in a black limbo. Ugh, I'm gonna have nightmares for weeks.
Thanks, Sonic. That was awful. I couldn't tell where I was or what had happened. Ugh, like I was trapped in a nightmare.
Well, you're safe now, and that's what's important.
While we didn't get any new stages, we did get one of the largest promoted inclusions, new skins. And I love these. It cannot be understated how much I think these add to the game. It really creates a sense to those eras that were included here. The Sonic Jam skin was exclusive to signing up to Sega's newsletter, and it really invokes that early 90s design charm. Low poly Sonic looks amazing. The other adventurous inclusion was, well, Sonic Adventure 1 skin for modern Sonic. Popping the skin on when running through Speed Highway, City Escape, and Seaside Hill was so nostalgic for me. Personally, this is my favorite skin in the game, and that's including the Terrio skin that we have yet to talk about in Shadow's expansion. Aside from the skins, Sonic Generations features some changes mechanically as well. There's no longer a life system by default. Both Sonics have the drop dash ability, even if it's not as good as just boosting. And a slight comment, but it really works great going downhill at this one specific spot in City Escape, and it just launches you forward. I don't know how beneficial it might be for speedrunning, or if it even is, but I digress. You can now even see where red star rings are in the level based on your progression. And probably the most important change was adding the option for multiple save slots. It's just nice to know I could easily re-experience this title without getting rid of any of my old info. So Sonic Generations in 2024 4 is as good as it ever was a decade ago, but back with new features. Launching at breakneck speeds across the seminal locations, the game doesn't miss a beat. The new additions, while welcome, don't do any harm to the original. And as the Nintendo Switch gameplay that's been playing throughout the video, I think it gives a great example of how well it runs on Switch. Even undocked sections play fantastically, and on an OLED screen with the striking colors of the stages, it really pops. Sonic may have the entire franchise on his back, but the spotlight was stolen by Shadow the Hedgehog. Launching what could be called Sonic Generations 2.0, Shadow has come in one step forward and two steps forward. Okay, you know what I was trying to do there. But Shadow Generations presents the best mixture of Sonic's gameplay and storytelling over the last decade and puts it into one unforgettable experience. Right from the beginning, you can tell Shadow's expansion means business. The story starts off with some of the best looking cutscenes for a Sonic game that we've had in a while. The detail here is immaculate. The lighting and having Shadow secluded in the stillness and darkness, it captures the ominous atmosphere very well, making us question what's going on and wanting to know more. Luckily, that's where Rouge interjects and begins asking Shadow about his whereabouts. We learn Shadow is aboard the Ark because of potential abnormalities that Gun has detected. Here, he's here to find and eliminate any possible threats. Soon after, his suspicions are confirmed as he locates Doom's Eye and gives chase through the first stage of the game, Space Colony Ark. As it is the first stage, it immediately shows what you're in for. Shadow blasts through his iconic stage, trying to catch up with Doom's Eye. The stage is a recreation of Final Rush from Adventure 2, with its weird shifts in gravity and bringing back those Chaos enemies. It's like we never left. Here, we get to use Shadow's Chaos Control and zip through time jumps and freeze time for a few seconds. During a section of the stage, you get a tease of the Doom Wings, one of Shadow's many new abilities. After catching up with Doom's Eye and attacking it, Shadow is alone again on the Ark. He comes to a Chaos Emerald, but one that Tails created back in Sonic Adventure 2, which I love that they added that, cause why? They didn't have to, and has it been here the entire time? How long has it been canonically since then? I'm sorry, but the Sonic Adventure 2 fanboy in me has me going nuts for this kind of stuff. Suddenly, a bright light explodes in the darkness of space as the Time Eater emerges and brings Shadow to white space, with some mysterious Doom Orb in the center. The journey in Shadow's white space is very similar to Sonic Frontier's open zones. Challenges litter the land for platforming, leading to chests of all types. Chests to open for music, for art, some parts of Shadow's history from specific games, and additional collectible gears for a rocket ship that Orbot and Cubot have been working on to escape white space. As well, there are locations with little flying contraptions that lead to pages of Gerald Robotnik's journal. Which reminds me, this isn't just a casual stroll or speed through Shadow's history and overcoming obstacles from his past in any kind of fun way like Sonic. This time, Shadow is outright struggling to keep reality and history in line. Shadow has to deal with the return of Maria and Gerald Robotnik, thanks to the Time Eater distorting time, and Black Doom taking this opportunity to mess with Shadow's Black Arm's DNA. Shadow is forced to also deal with new powers. Shadow's new Doom abilities are Chaos Spear, Blast, Surf, Morph, and Wings. All of these additions seem pretty minor, but some have some huge changes to gameplay, specifically Chaos Spears and Doom Wings. Using Spear normally stuns enemies for an easy follow-up attack, but after launching through rings, spring pads, and boost pads, if you spam Spear, it sends you flying at the same speed through the air to skip sections of stages. When I first saw that you can do that, it completely changed the way that I traveled through Shadow stages. And then, Doom Wings. Now I could have sworn that I had unlocked them when I first played Space Colony Ark stage, but when I got near the end of the story, I was pretty confused when I unlocked the Wings abilities officially. I guess somehow I didn't realize that they were removed from Shadow's arsenal. But the Doom's Wings allows for stages to be nearly ruined. But what do I mean? Not ruined in the worst way. I mean in the best. Doom Wings not only allow for you to fly similar to Supersonic, but they also make you invincible, flying directly through enemies and around levels geometry. It allows for huge skips, whether intentional or not. The wings are great fun though, and it makes speedrunning stages an absolute blast. I love to collect my 50 rings, sprout the wings, and take different directions trying to find ways to skip sections of the levels, which, well, brings me to stages. The stages are scattered in white space, similar to the cyberspace levels of Sonic Frontiers. The stages work as a centralized location on the map to complete challenges and platforming tasks for rewards. There are a total of 5 of these central locations, 4 stages. Since Shadow has been around only since the 3D era, his stages all take place post Sonic Adventure 1. His stages are Space Colony Arc, Radical Highway, Rail Canyon, Radical Highway, Kingdom Valley, Sunset Heights, Radical Highway, and Chaos Island. And then finally, Radical Highway. And why did I mention it so much? Well, it's cause in a few stages, Shadow's transported by Doom's Eye to a distorted version of Radical Highway. Each time I enjoyed, but I continued to long for the true recreation of Radical Highway, which finally did show up. Just like Sonic's Adventure and Generation, each stage has 2 acts. Each act has one 3D and one 2D version of the stage. And I feel like Sonic Team realized something that had made Generation stages so fun was all the additional pathways. And here, they multiplied the openings. Not only that, but the stages are longer as a whole. Each stage in recent Sonic games has taken only roughly a minute or 2 to complete, but in Shadow's expansion, it's no comparison. Shadow stages all take about 3 or 4 minutes or longer when going through them for the first time, and even when speedrunning it's hard to get that any lower, which has been such a blessing. I'm so glad to finally have some long stages after years of bite-sized ones. Each stage opens up, and I think the best examples of this are Chaos Island and Kingdom Valley, which, special shout out to Kingdom Valley, Act 1 is my favorite stage of the entire game. There's a ton of variety here. In Chaos Island, maintaining the morph and multiple areas allows you to jump over huge sections of enemies or platform, which is faster, but you don't have as many chances to build up your chaos control meter for additional 5 seconds of frozen time. Later sections, if your reflexes are fast enough, it allows you to skip over superfluous sections by jumping through rings. And oh baby, this is my stage. I gotta gush a little bit, but I love the detail in Kingdom Valley. The water, the wind grinding, the launches through the air. I mean, there's just so much to love. It looks so lush, and it feels like you could almost feel the air going across your skin. Okay, but anyways, back to the paths. The main path from the beginning sends you into your immediate first decision. Do you bounce up for a small skip, or do you stay continuing on the path to build up your meter and get some extra rings? Later on, you have an option to stay on a path that takes a little longer, or jump into the air to go through a ring and gather some more rings, speeds you up and continues your momentum. Later on, sections with Doom Wings just can completely be annihilated, like right here. Just like Sonic Generations, after completing stages, there are challenge stages you must beat to gather keys for iconic boss battles. And honestly, I like them all. The Bio Lizard, Metal Overlord, Mephiles, and the game's final boss. Though, my personal favorite is the Mephiles boss fight. Him knowing and acknowledging that his game was erased from the timeline, Mephiles spouts off different comments of wanting to be part of the timeline and begging to be restored. The boss fight is fun to see unique enemies return from 06, and to see Mephiles think that he can actually get the jump on Shadow with his light attack. Outside of the story, I did have a couple nitpicks I wanted to mention. Specific for the Switch, Shadow Generations runs on the Hedgehog Engine 2, and because it's on the Switch, anytime you pause or actually just play the game in handheld mode, it's a little blurry. It's very minor, but it is enough for you to notice it. It's definitely different than Sonic Generations, where the game looks crisp the whole time. As far as the game itself, when Sonic completes a homing attack, he bursts up with a fiery animation striking different poses. Now I know Shadow isn't as enthusiastic as Sonic, but having only one unique animation after landing an attack, it feels a little lame. And then Shadow boost animation, it just kind of looks like he's doing a superhero pose and boosting forward. It doesn't feel like the sense of speed is really being captured with that pose. I wish there was something else there. But all in all, originally, at the Sonic X Shadow Generations reveal, I thought we were getting a remake with 3 small stages, similar to Sonic Forces, but I am so glad to say that this was so much more. The Shadow Generations expansion was almost able to be a standalone title in its own right. Shadow's game gives vast improvements on the already polished gameplay from Sonic Generations. It adds more optional paths for exploration, more story to encourage completion, and creates a better open zone than most of Sonic Frontiers. Shadow Generations strikes a nearly perfect balance between freedom of movement and control. But that's basically it. I enjoyed almost every single addition that was placed in the Shadows expansion, though I do think Westopolis should have been featured at least to give homage to Shadow's standalone title. But aside from that, Shadow's story of reuniting with the Professor and Maria tied the experience in a nice bow. It looks like Sega strived to create the new Sonic experience, and they captured it. Thanks for watching, till next time.